from our first session, he was like, you need to take a complete break. Like, you can walk 20 minutes a day, but that is it. Your body has been under so much stress. And so I continued with the same nutrition that I had been doing essentially. And it was 1 month after I stopped exercising that I got my period back for the first time in 20 years. Why on earth is this not something that we are taught like in high school and junior high, and learn about our bodies and learn how to track? And because I just think if girls are taught that and they know ovulation is a sign of health, and you know what a normal cycle is supposed to look like, and they're educated on that, then when things go awry, they're so much more likely to be like, something's wrong, and advocate for themselves and go seek answers. Whereas I just, again, it was people and doctors saying, oh, this is normal because you are an athlete.
Welcome to the Truth and Fertility Podcast. I'm Haley, wife, mom, and a fertility charting instructor, here to teach you the undeniable truth about your fertility. So let's get started. Welcome back to the Truth and Fertility Podcast. Today I'm sitting down with a dear friend of mine. Her name is Shannon Leach. She is a nurse practitioner, and I actually met her just this last February. We were both at a speaker training for an organization called Facts About Fertility. I've talked about them on the podcast before. They're an amazing organization, and they teach people like Shannon and I how to give talks to doctors and med students about their fertility and about restorative reproductive medicine. So that is how I met Shannon. We were actually roommates at this training that we went to, and I got to know her very well and a little bit about her story. And so I thought, her story is amazing, and it's something that's worth talking about and getting out to the world. So, Shannon, why don't you just go ahead, introduce yourself, and I'd love to just chat with you about your story and what has brought you here to today.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's such an honor. So my name is Shannon Leach. I'm a nurse practitioner. I live in Everett, Washington. I am a mom of 5. And so currently I'm just working part-time in 2 different women's health clinics. But what's funny is that I wasn't introduced into the world of restorative reproductive medicine until spring of 2024. And I hadn't started my 2 jobs as a women's health nurse practitioner, but the CEO at the time, I was interviewing at this position, and she had said, you got to jump on this podcast because this is kind of the direction our clinic wants to go. And so it wasn't a podcast, it was a webinar, and it was Katie Vidmar, who is now works for Natural Womanhood.
Wonderful woman. Yeah.
Such an amazing person. And that was my first time I'd ever learned of her. But on it, she spoke about facts about fertility. And so, of course, after this webinar, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't learn about any of this stuff when I was going through high school, even through nursing school, even through nurse practitioner school. And here I was 38 at the time, and I'm like, I literally know nothing about my body, it seems like. And so I was so intrigued. And so I jumped on the Facts website, saw all the CMEs, and immediately was like, I want to do these. I want to learn these. And had emailed someone about, how to get started. And they're like, well, are you a member at Facts? And I was like, no. And they're like, do you want to be? And I was like, sure, I guess. And I feel like that was the trajectory of the rest of my life, because it completely changed me for the better. Because as a result, then I just started getting introduced to more of the fertility awareness-based methods. At one point, I decided to do both the FEM cohort and the neo-fertility cohort with Facts to learn both of those methods. Became the Facts trained speaker that Haley had mentioned, and got to room with her, which was just so fun, and have been able to do a couple of those talks to the medical school students, which has just been so rewarding and such an honor, because I'm just so excited for these medical students that they're learning this while they're in school and not 12 years later I am.
Later.
I've been a nurse practitioner for a long time and just learning this stuff. So along the course of the way, I also decided to do the teacher training for FEM, mostly because I wanted to learn as a medical clinician, like what my patients were being taught, and then just also really understand the charting for myself. I also went through the FEM medical management course this past June, and then just a couple weeks ago went to the advanced course on obesity, which was amazing. Um, and this last summer started in a new clinic where I get to actually implement FEM and do the medical management piece of it. We have 3 total teachers that work for our clinic. 2 can be in person, the other one's virtual, in Arizona, actually.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so it just was, I just kept grabbing at every opportunity I could to learn about fertility awareness-based method. But as a result, it got me really reflecting on my own story and my own journey. And so back in February when I'd met you, I told you all 5 of my kids were from IVF. I had played college soccer, and it was my junior season that I had lost my period. And at that time, everybody, which I still feel like unfortunately is still part of the common comments of, oh, it's just normal, like you're an athlete. That is still part of what women hear, I think, which is wrong, because now I say to everybody I can meet, if you ever don't have your period, it is not normal, because I lived for so long thinking this is just kind of the way it is. And I even in nursing school met with a reproductive endocrinologist who was like, yeah, I mean, your labs are kind of abnormal, but you're not trying to get pregnant right now, so let's put you on the pill and let's try to like regulate your periods.
Yeah, we all
Which
know how
is,
that goes, right?
yes, never a solution to a problem. And so sure enough, when my husband and I decided we wanted to have kids, still hadn't had a period this whole time. I hadn't been on birth control. Like I was on it for a period of time, but then was off it, and even still didn't have a period. They tried to do like the Provera challenge to get me to bleed, nothing. And so very quickly it was like, you need to see the fertility specialist in Seattle, and met with them. I was given the diagnosis of hypothalamic amenorrhea, and then also hypogonadotrophic hypogonadism, which is such a mouthful. But so for people that are listening, essentially it was like I wasn't having my periods, and my whole system had turned off. My brain was no longer talking to my ovaries. And they never said why. I remember explicitly asking my IVF doctor, because at this time I was a nurse practitioner, and I'd heard of like the female athlete triad of women that work out a lot and they lose their periods. But like my bones were fine because I had bone density scans, and so I was just like, could it be that? I don't really know. And I had said to her, if I stopped exercising and gained 20 pounds, would that make a difference? And she said no. And
Who is
looking,
this that you were talking to?
my fertility, my IVF doctor.
The IVF doctor. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and she said no. And I told so Dr. Duane, who
Mm-hmm.
started Facts, is actually now my personal doctor, because
Of
through the
course.
like,
That's awesome.
yeah, through the teacher or the speaker training, at one point I just was like, I said to her, I don't know if you can be my doctor or not, but like I need somebody to help me with my own stuff, because I don't really trust any, like I've seen endocrinologists who are basically like, yeah, they're abnormal, but it's just the way it is. You're going to be on hormones like indefinitely. But Dr. Duane's point was, to the IVF doctor, it wouldn't have changed anything. It wasn't going to change my trajectory of like the path they had me going down. If I had done those behaviors, but it was never a conversation of like, yeah, if you did those things, you might get your period back, which is what I learned in this last year because of diving into the fertility awareness-based methods. And then all these podcasts started coming up on hypothalamic amenorrhea, and I just listened to one after the other, and all of a sudden I was like, I actually think I can do something about this. And so anyway, we did do 3 total IVF cycles. And after the first one, so we lost 2 embryos, our very first round, transferred 2, neither took. Our daughter was the third of 3, and she was a frozen embryo. And so even after that cycle, it wasn't like, let's explore, let's get to the root of this. It just was like, on to round number 2. And even before the first round, They had me do 2 IUIs, which formerly was called artificial insemination. And looking back, it's just so funny because I was on another podcast and she's like, don't you find it so funny? Like you literally weren't ovulating and yet they're making you do IUI, which you have to
Right.
ovulate in order for it to work. But it's like they have such a structured protocol of like, you try this first, and then if you fail twice, then you move on to IVF. And I always say, like, I wouldn't change my story at all because I probably wouldn't have the 5 children that I do. But
Right.
now that I know differently, I feel so strongly that it's my job and my calling to teach other women that IVF is not the only way. There are very like small circumstances in which maybe, okay, once you've tried all the other things, it might be the only solution. But for me personally, I'm like, if I had changed my nutrition and been fueling my body enough and exercised less, I probably could have got my period back 20 years ago.
Wow.
So anyway, I met you in February, and um, after that was when I kind of started working with Dr. Duane. I was like, I really want to look at my labs. Like I had been on bioidentical hormones for a while, and I just thought, do I need to be on these? I don't really know. I really want to get to the root of this. And so she initially ran some labs, and we started treating my thyroid and got on like low dose naltrexone, which is common when you're just your body's under a lot of stress. My cortisol levels were like through the roof. Everything was totally suppressed. Like I had almost no estrogen, no progesterone. I mean, everything was so low. And she was like, can we do you as a case study for facts on one of the calls? Like, will you write it up? And I was like, yeah, that's fine. And she like flipped my initials so it wasn't super obvious. And it was on the call. And I remember specifically some people being like, I have literally never seen like, I think it was like insulin and then my thyroid or like the T4 or something like so low. And I was just sitting there like, oh my goodness. So probably the biggest thing that helped the most, though, was I started working initially with one nutritionist back in May, cut back on some of the exercise, but still was exercising, increased my caloric intake a ton. But then I kept hearing this guy, his name's Chris Sandell, who is a nutritionist and eating disorder expert. He currently lives in Scotland, and I listened to enough of his podcast, how he would talk about exercise and like you just have to take a complete break from exercise. And he had been on a podcast of Nicola Rinaldi, who wrote the book No Period Now What,
Okay.
and or yeah, sorry. I think I'm saying her name wrong. Anyway, I had heard him on a podcast that was in connection to hypothalamic amenorrhea. And so as much as I was like, I didn't want to give up exercise because it's been a part of my life, like forever. I played college soccer. I also knew that he was the person that I needed to work with. So I started working with him in August. And yeah, from our first session, he was like, you need to take a complete break. Like you can walk 20 minutes a day, but that is it. Your body has been under so much stress. And so I continued with the same nutrition that I had been doing essentially. And it was 1 month after I stopped exercising that I got my period back for the first time in 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my word.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm almost about to have my third cycle. Which is when I can like reintroduce exercise. But I think the thing that's been really cool to me is that before my first period started, because of learning FEM and learning fertility awareness-based methods and doing this with facts and the teaching and teaching other people, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm starting to have like EL and ES mucus, which I hadn't had before because I was just so like my estrogen was so low that I just wouldn't experience that. And so I had some kits at home, the Clear Blue monitor, and did it. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, because it was like peak fertility. And so I like text Dr. Duane and I was like, oh my goodness, like, is this what I think it is? And so then we got labs that showed like I had ovulated. And yeah, so it was such a cool like moment for me able to be able to recognize, because otherwise it would have come as a total surprise like 2 weeks later, which would have been okay too. But it
But
is,
to make
yes,
that confirmation that like this
yes,
is a true
absolutely.
period, I
Yes.
ovulated.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And then even the second one was funny because then I was like, the first one, my luteal phase was, I think 10 days or something, which is still okay, but so then the next time, like 10 days passed, and then the 11th day, and then the 12th day, and I'm like, is it just not like the completely irrational part of me was like, I know it said I ovulated, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe I don't know. But it ended up being like a 12-day luteal phase. So I was like, okay.
Which is
So,
wonderful.
yes, yeah, like
Yeah.
really good. So, yeah, so it's just been, I just feel like being introduced into this restorative reproductive world has like completely changed my life, both personally and professionally, because now, um, at least in one of my clinics, I'm able to use the FEM protocols. We're just starting out like our program. And so get to utilize that and help women in that way, and hopefully help them in a way that I wasn't helped when I was struggling with infertility. Just because I
Yeah.
do know it's such a better way. I mean, going through IVF was one of the like hardest, most difficult things I've ever been through. Emotionally, physically, financially, it's draining. We went into debt for a little bit and like put it on the credit cards, and we thought that was really the only way, because people said like, if you want to become pregnant, this is your only way. Um, and now I know that's different, and I just hope that I can educate more women and teach women to go a different
Yeah.
path.
Yeah. Yeah. Shannon, your story is so inspiring too, because it just makes it known that it's never too late to learn this. Like even if you've had the backstory of IVF in your example or other things, and it is never too late. And you did not have your period for 20 years, and now you're finding that health, and that is truly amazing. I want to go back to the very beginning of the story, because you said you lost your period when you were a junior in college. You were playing soccer for your college. What was that like, losing your period? Like, was that, I mean, I know you said that, oh, you just heard like, oh, that's the normal thing. Like, you're an athlete. That makes sense. But at what point were you thinking, okay, maybe this isn't normal. I should probably see a doctor or do something about this?
Yeah. I mean, I think because I had never learned about fertility awareness and like ovulation as a sign of health and the fifth vital sign, it didn't even cross my mind. Like I knew it was not right, but again, there was a lot of athletes I knew that was a common thing. And so I didn't really think about it too much. And then I would meet a doctor who would be like, "Oh yeah, it's just because you're so athletic and you work out so much." And even same like later on down the road when I was considering pregnancy, they're like, oh, well, it's probably because you're training for a marathon now. So let's just wait and see what happens. And, but when I went out to nursing school, so I couldn't do nursing school while I was playing college soccer. So finished my undergrad at UW and then went to upstate New York. And out there, I was kind of like, I should get this checked out. But that was a reproductive endocrinologist who's like, specialist in that field. And again, he didn't tell me to change anything. He just said, I mean, they're kind of off. Which looking back, I'm like, they were already showing that it was hypothalamic amenorrhea. But that's when he was just like, let's just put you on the birth control pill to quote unquote like regulate your cycles.
Yeah. Okay. So he was the one that put you on the birth control pill. And then
Yeah.
how long did you decide to take that?
I didn't take it, I would say maybe a year or two.
Okay.
And then I didn't need the birth control. And I also was like, this isn't really like, why am I taking this? So thankfully I
Yeah.
wasn't on it for a super long time, because maybe it would have
Yeah.
suppressed it even more. I don't really know. But yeah, so
Were you still bleeding when you were on, like with the the time of the birth control pill where you would be taking like the placebo pill or sugar pill or whatever, were you still having a bleed then, or was it like completely you were not bleeding at all?
Yeah, I actually don't
If you
remember.
even remember. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't remember if I was or not. And I think I was just so used to not having one that I don't remember if I would just skip the sugar ones too. And so then it would
Yeah.
be, because everyone would say, oh, it's so much better if you like don't have a period, you know?
Right, it's so much more convenient, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's like,
Yeah, well,
well,
I'm
it's
just
not
curious.
convenient to not be able to have children.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. So I was just curious because, I mean, not saying that the period, quote unquote, that you have on the birth control pill even is a period, because it's not. It's just a withdrawal bleed. But I was just curious to know if you were still even experiencing bleeding on the period itself. So
Yeah.
then, okay, so you were on the pill for a year or two, you got off. Tell me a little bit about the experience of then, marrying your husband and trying to conceive. Like, at what point were you guys, maybe you were told IVF is your only option? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah. So, I actually ran the Boston Marathon the year of the bombing. And so that was the year that we also decided we wanted to get pregnant. So I'd finished that race, which and it training for a marathon is a stress on the body, but like to have the whole experience of what happened that year was
Yeah,
another like trauma in itself. So it's like no surprise that everything was shut down and didn't want to turn back
right,
on.
right.
But it was that summer that we were like, yeah, we want to start, having kids because we had been married a full year then. And that's when they did some blood work, did the Provera challenge, and it was very quick. Like it wasn't even like we didn't have the time of like, try for 6 months or because I wasn't having a period. So it was so evident right away that something was going on, but their solution, was IVF, not let's
Yeah.
actually get at
What
the root of it.
what is you said the Provera challenge? What is that?
Yeah, so where they give, I want to say it's like a lot of like progesterone to try and initiate a withdrawal bleed. So they give it to
I
you
see.
for like a certain amount of days, and then once you stop it, you're supposed to get a bleed. But I think all my hormones were so suppressed that it wasn't enough to even create that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And were you working out super intensely still throughout? I mean, obviously you ran the marathon, so yes, you were
Yeah,
working out then. And then when you were
I
trying to
had
conceive, was it the
Yeah,
same?
I had cut back, especially during all the IVF times, and through those rounds. And when I eventually got pregnant, like I didn't do a lot even through the first trimester because then I was terrified of like miscarriage or, blaming myself. But once I got through the first trimester, then they were like, and I mean, they reassured me the whole time, like, it's okay to keep doing what you had been doing. But I had cut back from what it had been. Obviously, I wasn't marathon training anymore or anything, but yeah, still working out and just eating like I now I like I'm working with an eating disorder specialist and I never had anorexia. I just was always exercising more than what I wasn't getting enough food, I guess, for the amount that I was exercising and I never really knew that. And I just kind of fell into the like diet culture trap of like eating healthy and eating clean that just became too healthy and too clean over the years. And again, nobody ever said like if you just change these things, like things can look so different for you.
I want to interrupt this episode to tell you about We Heart Nutrition. This is a company that is family owned and offers wholesome, research backed supplements for both men and women. Their products are crafted with integrity using clinical doses of research backed, most absorbable forms of each nutrient. And what I love most about this company, you guys, is that it is pro life. 10% of every sale they give to the pro life cause and supporting pregnancy care centers. So it's amazing. This is definitely a place that I want to support. So I have been taking the prenatal vitamins and their magnesium supplements. And first of all, I feel like I'm just in a season of life where I'm just always taking a prenatal, whether I'm pregnant or nursing or preparing for a pregnancy. I really love that I am taking a prenatal that I can trust, and also the magnesium helping with good sleep, especially when I have those babies waking me up during the middle of the night. So go to weheartnutrition.com and use the code TRUTH to get 20% off of your first order. That's code TRUTH for 20% off your first order. I know you're going to love them.
And so I'm going to ask a question. I don't mean to oversimplify things because I know your story has so many layers, but I mean, was it really just as simple as you needed to stop working out as much and just eat more? I mean, again, I don't want to oversimplify
Yeah,
it, but just in the last 20 years, never having a period, was that really just that was what the barrier was?
I really do think it was. I mean, for people with the diagnosis of hypothalamic amenorrhea, uh, I mean, I don't know the percentage, but I think pretty much everybody, it's just an imbalance of what you're taking in versus what you're expending. Um, and so, yeah, it was never intentional. Like I was eating most before I started, like the recovery, like 2,000 calories a day, which for some women, they'd be like, oh my gosh, that's a lot, which it's not for people that are active, but,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
so it wasn't like I was, trying to do like 1,200 calories a day or anything extreme. It just wasn't enough for the amount that I was moving my body. And even throughout this, it's funny because I'm like, most days, even if I'm like just walking my kids to and from school and doing stuff around the house, like I'll hit my 10,000 steps most of the days. I'm not even trying anymore as a goal because all these all these things that we set and like that are supposed to be and supposed to be healthy are like not always. But I just have found that I am an active person. I'm not sedentary all day, and so it's things like that even that people don't account for in calories that they're using up that then need to be replaced.
Yeah, yeah. So okay, you get to a point where IVF is really your only option. You go through multiple rounds of that. I know you have 5 children from that, and your last are twins. Is
Yes,
that right?
yes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay,
yeah,
I remember
yeah.
that. How old are they now?
They'll be 6 on Friday,
Oh my
actually.
word. Yeah, I
Yeah, and
remember I remember you saying because our my oldest and your twins are about the same age. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
okay, so you go through the IVF, you have 5 beautiful children from that, but then you get to a point where so you said 2024 was when you first heard about restorative reproductive medicine. You went on a webinar with Katie Vidmar, who I actually have interviewed on this podcast too. She's wonderful.
Yeah,
I
she's
love that
amazing.
woman. And so you hear about this new thing called restorative reproductive medicine. So what was your reaction to that? Like, did you kind of just have your whole life flash before your eyes? Like, what happened? What was going through your mind when you
Yeah,
first learned, like, oh my gosh, there is another option?
right. I think why on earth is this not something that we are taught like in high school and junior high and learn about our bodies and learn how to track and because I just think if girls are taught that and they know ovulation is a sign of health and you know what a normal cycle is supposed to look like and they're educated on that, then when things go awry, they're so much more likely to be like, something's wrong and advocate for themselves and go seek answers. Whereas I just, again, it was people and doctors saying, oh, this is normal because you are an athlete and not talking about all the negative side effects and long-term consequences that thankfully I so far have been like spared from. I mean, I actually was in a Mayo Clinic study um, for hypothalamic amenorrhea. So I went in May and then August, and they did a bunch of blood tests. They did a bone density scan. They we had a Fitbit, so they tracked like how much movement we did throughout those 3 months, and we did surveys and everything. And it also included a vascular testing. And so they would put a blood pressure cuff on your arm for 5 solid minutes to basically cut off the blood flow. And then you had a little probe on your finger that was measuring like heartbeat and oxygen, all the things. And then they let it out and basically see how quickly the vessels would fill back up, which would be an indicator of heart health really. Because kind of like when menopause happens and estrogen drops, women are at higher risk for heart disease and heart attacks and, you know, dementia down the road, all the things, but then bone health, of course, and osteoporosis. And that's where you see like a lot of runners in particular who have hypothalamic amenorrhea have a lot of fractures because their bones get weakened because they don't have the estrogen. But thank God, my bones are great. Like the doctor even said, look, I actually am like, these are amazing. I haven't seen such good bone scores in a while. And so I was like, well, that's
Awesome.
reassuring. And my heart health was good. So I just feel like I am so blessed in that way because I lived with such low hormones for so long. And it just became my normal. Like I was exhausted all the time. I had
When you were working out, you were feeling
yeah,
exhausted all the time? Okay.
yes. And I was probably running on adrenaline because my cortisol was so high and everything was so low, you know. I was always cold all the time. My libido was like terrible.
Yeah.
Just all these things that I just kind of thought were like normal, because that's what I had just been used to all along. But then like since May where I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so much energy and I'm sleeping so much better. You know, I had a ton of anxiety. I struggled with a lot of anxiety, that got especially worse after my twins, which I mean, there was COVID too. So there's a lot of elements on
Yeah.
board. But but the Chris Sandell, the eating disorder specialist, calls eating disorders, anxiety disorders. And it's just so amazing. Like once your body and your brain is getting all the nutrients it needs and all the things and in a good place, like everything else starts to heal itself. So yeah, I just
Yeah.
feel so much better. And I'm just so thankful to my body too, because I'm like, wow, our bodies are really remarkable that it was completely suppressed and shut down for 20 years. And yet after like 4 months, 5 months really, of just making some lifestyle changes. I mean, yeah, I got put on some medications, but it was like thyroid medication and DHEA supplement and like low dose naltrexone, like nothing extreme. And it came back. So
Yeah. Wow. So you started working with Dr. Marguerite Duane. Also, I have interviewed her on this podcast too. So I'll
yeah,
link those in the show notes below because
yeah,
they're
great.
those two women, Katie Vidmar and Dr. Duane, are just brilliant. And yeah, I'm
Yes.
so glad that I've had the pleasure to meet them. So you started working with Marguerite Duane after our FACS training or speaker training. And I mean, what was her reaction to everything? Like, was she surprised by anything she saw? Like with I mean, I know you said your hormones were just like completely like null. And
Yeah.
you had also, oh, that's the question I want to ask, kind of backing up a tiny bit. You said that you had been taking bioidentical hormones. So is that
Mhm.
like, so what did that look like for you? I mean, because I'm assuming that was if with the intention of trying to mimic a real cycle. But
Yeah.
clearly, I mean, you still weren't ovulating, you still weren't having a period. So
Right.
what was that like being on those identical hormones, bioidentical
Yeah,
hormones?
so I mean, after the IVF, it was always like you're gonna have to be on some sort of hormones for a while, or like indefinitely, really. But initially, they were like, the IUD is not a bad approach because, you can get the hormones that way. It's birth control, whatever. But then again, it was in like late summer of 2024 that all of a sudden I was like learning more about birth control methods and synthetic hormones. And I was like, I don't think I want this in my body anymore.
Hmm.
And my husband got a vasectomy. So then I was like, okay, then we don't have to worry about that. Um, because we did feel like we were done with our family. And then I did a lot of research and I was like, okay, if I'm going to have to be on hormones, I want it to be bioidentical. But it was interesting because it was a combo one. So it wasn't like trying to mimic um,
Oh, so you were taking estrogen and progesterone at the same time.
yes, yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Because that's
Okay.
what I had worked with someone like virtually out of Nebraska. And so when I first started working with Dr. Duane, I was off hormones for a little bit while we like got everything going. And then for the summer, I was back on estrogen and progesterone. But then when I started working with the eating disorder specialist, I was like, I want to take a break. Like I'm taking a break from the exercise. I want to take a break from the hormones and like, then let's see what can happen. I still do use testosterone cream because my testosterone was pretty low and that's helped a lot. But I
Mm-hmm.
haven't been on estrogen or progesterone at all since probably late July.
Okay. So
Yeah.
what is the point then of taking the bioidentical estrogen and progesterone if you're taking it at the same time? Because if
Yeah.
for the listeners who just kind of crash course really quick on the on the
Yeah.
cycle, right? Estrogen and progesterone are ebbing and flowing throughout the cycle, right? Pre-ovulation, we have estrogen is high. Post-ovulation, estrogen is still there, but progesterone is much more dominant. So there should be that ebb and flow. So what was the purpose then of taking it at the same time throughout the
Same time.
whole thing?
They never really explained it to me. I think it was just to give my body hormones. But yeah,
Okay.
looking back, I'm like, that didn't make sense. Because even now with all the fem training, I'm like, you do progesterone cyclically if you're using progesterone, um, because it should mimic the way your body's intended to have your hormones rise and and
Yeah. Yeah.
decrease. So yeah.
Yeah. So then you meet Dr. Dwayne
Hmm.
and you start working with
Oh
her.
yeah.
So, okay, yeah, going back to my
So
original question
her
then. So, yeah, what was her initial thought when she saw your blood
reaction,
work?
yeah. Well, when she heard how much I was working out, she's like, that's got to change. And I was like, I
S-
know.
Let's pause. How much were you working out?
I was cycling every day, usually like an hour. I was still lifting probably 4 or 5 days a week. And then I would also walk every morning, like 45 minutes, but then like walk my kids to school. So, I mean, probably all said and done, like an hour to an hour and a half of walking too. And I was
Wow.
getting up because I like always felt like it was my me time in the morning, but I was waking at like 4:15 most mornings so that I could, cycle and lift and then get my walk in and be ready by the time the kids were up. And now I just sleep in during
Good
that
for
time and it's
you.
amazing.
Oh my gosh, Shannon, I have to tell you, I mean, it is one thing to work out on a daily basis, right? And for most people, like that is a good and healthy thing. But it's another thing to work out when you're on vacation. I just remember. I remember sharing a room with you, and you're like, "Yeah, I'm gonna get up at 4 a.m. to work out," and I'm just
Yeah.
like, "Peace!" Like,
Yeah.
I am sleeping in. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know if you could consider it vacation what we were doing, but it
Right.
was just, using the hotel. I just you
Yeah.
think like, who uses the hotel workout room,
Yeah.
right? And you are the one that uses that.
I know.
Yeah, it was just
I just
funny. So yeah, go on, go on.
Yeah, I just think it's funny because there's this like, and my mom and I talk about this a lot. There's such a fine balance, and like, at what point does it teeter over the edge of not healthy? Whereas some people will
Yeah.
look at it and be like, and that's what I would get a lot. Oh my gosh, you're so dedicated, you're so fit, you're so this, and um, yeah, and you get in that mindset of like, that's what I have to do, and like. But it wasn't healthy. It wasn't healthy at all.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm just so thankful, like taking the break from exercise, I think was absolutely necessary. I was able to, like, after the first 6 weeks, add back in yoga, which helped a lot because I was like, I just feel like I can't even touch my toes anymore. I'm so tight.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just mentally too, I feel like that always puts you in a good like mental space. But I feel like taking that break has helped me really get a good, clear, like looking back at how unhealthy that was and just be able to have a better relationship with it moving forward. But yeah, so I remember Dr. Dwayne being like, we're gonna look at this. But I don't know if she ever explicitly said it, but I do think she kind of said, I don't know if we're gonna be able to get your period back. But to me, I was like, that's okay. I just want to do all the behaviors that I need to that would potentially make it come back, even if it never does. So she was just so elated when I had texted her that time and was like, I got my period.
That's amazing.
Yeah, because I really like sometimes I just feel like it's such a miracle, but
Yeah.
It's been hard work. I mean, and I've gained a lot of weight, and it was through the summer. So then like when my kids started school, I can't tell you how many people asked me if I was pregnant, and that's just a whole nother thing. I'm like,
Why? Why would anybody think that
I
that's a
know.
good question?
I know.
Golly.
You would be amazed because it happened
Yeah.
like I don't even know, maybe up to 10 times probably.
Oh
And
my word.
I know, and different people. And to be fair, like the guy I'm working with, he's like, because I had done a before and after picture to be like, this was not healthy and this is healthy. And he was like, people have probably only seen you look this way when you were pregnant. And so like trying to be the devil's advocate, but I'm also like, PSA, like you never know what people are going through. They could be recovering from an eating disorder and have gained weight or have an illness, or and same goes when people lose weight. Like when you comment on people, like we just shouldn't comment on people's bodies. Like it's just not
Yeah.
necessary.
Basic rule
So
of thumb. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So you said though that you had cut back on exercise, but it was hard for you to just completely stop. So I know you said you started working with, I can't remember the name of him, but you said you started working with somebody in Scotland
Yeah.
who recommended, yeah, full hard stop. So what was
Yeah.
that like? Because you had gone, I mean, your whole life, last 20, 30 years of working out so much, being an athlete, being a marathon runner, and then all of a sudden you're told you can bear, like, I just want you to walk. Like, even just mentally, what was that like for you?
Yeah, it was really challenging. I think that because I had worked with a different nutritionist, Abby Grimm, who's amazing, from May to August. And with her, I was still working out, but I had changed the nutrition a lot. And so because I had cut back, and it was like gradual, like cut back a little bit more and like only lifting a couple days a week and down to like 1 day of cycling. Um, I think it was much easier, whereas I don't think I would have been ready to do that like from day one when I first started in May. But I think that I had just heard enough podcasts about the hypothalamic amenorrhea, and a lot of people had said really, and this Nicola Sykes, who her book, she wrote it under as Nicola Sykes, and then now I think it's Nicola Rinaldi, that is the No Period Now What. So I had a few sessions with her as well. Um, and then an amazing woman, Florence Gillette, or Gillette, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, that is a
Mm,
body image. And she actually is out of Dubai, but she and Nicola work closely together. But they all too were like, your body has to, take that break. So as much as it was difficult, I also knew like I wanted to look back and say I did everything I could to get it back. And I honestly didn't expect, because like I had heard, people who are recovering from hypothalamic amenorrhea, like it's years sometimes before they get their periods back. And so, and that's after like only a few years of not having a period. And so the fact that I hadn't had mine for 2 decades, I was expecting a lot longer before it came back, I guess. So it was just such a huge blessing that it did. And I'm just so thankful for all the people I've worked with along the way, because they've been really instrumental in helping me get to where I am. So
yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk to you a little bit too about what that nutritional change was, because I mean, you were eating super healthy, I remember.
mhm.
And and then you also mentioned that you were on some different supplements and medications. Can you talk a little bit about, okay, what nutritional changes did you make? What supplement or medications did you start? What
Mhm.
actually moved the needle for you? Can you go into a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So the supplements, like what I'm taking now, is essentially what I've been taking most of the time. Although I was taking some more like prebiotics, probiotics, and different things to heal the gut, because I think a lot of times when people eat so clean, then it disrupts the gut microbiome also, and so that sometimes needs a little like restoration. So I take beef liver supplements. Jewel Wellness is the brand, and the girls that bought that company actually have the HA Society. And so I listen to their podcast a lot. But again, it's just just a really good like daily multivitamin basically. And so I alternate that with oyster supplements every other month. Again, just getting the minerals and vitamins. I'm taking the levothyroxine for my thyroid still, getting that rechecked here tomorrow, actually. Because hopefully at some point I can get off that. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I'm taking DHEA, which, yeah, can convert estrogen and to testosterone. And then vitamin D and fish oil is what I take in the morning. And then at night, low dose naltrexone and magnesium glycinate just for, I had always taken that for sleep, but then also in like the perimenopause years, everybody says like, just take it, it's good for you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so nothing like crazy. I 100% think it was just getting enough calories and letting my body recover and not burn as many calories. For on like the whole, it seems like across the board, most people, when people are recovering from hypothalamic amenorrhea, suggests like at least 3,000 calories a day. So that definitely took like it, even still, I mean, it takes effort to be very like conscientious of like having a pretty big breakfast, always making sure you're having a snack, having a lunch, always having a snack, big dinner, and then I mean, I think I eat ice cream like every single night because I'm like, oh, I still need like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And my nutritionist, because I was like, I mean, is it bad that I'm having it most nights? And he's like, people give ice cream a bad rap. Like, there's actually some good nutrients in there. You know, there's some protein, some
You didn't
dairy,
hear
like,
it from me. There you
yeah.
go.
Um, so yeah, and it again, it just was kind of working with Chris Sandell, the nutritionist of he really works on like the psychological piece of it, which is really why I turned to him and wanted to work with him because not only is he a nutritionist, but he's an eating disorder specialist. So he talks a lot about the polyvagal theory, which I had never actually heard of before. It's just a different way of looking at like fight and flight and rest and digest, but there's dorsal vagal and ventral vagal and then like the sympathetic like fight or flight state. But really works on different, like he has a whole module that once you sign up with him, you go through this thing. And so just kind of looking at like do different exercises. And one of them was like, what food rules do you have that like I never even realized I developed. But again, it was like, oh, I had tried this nutritional program because I was doing some of the like health coaching, you know, where it was like fasting, for example, and then realizing like fasting is terrible for my hormones and probably most people that are menstruating.
I've heard
Um,
that the research behind fasting is done mostly on men. And
and
so
it
that's why
makes
you'll
sense.
hear like it's great, but men's hormones are across the board pretty straight.
Study. Yes,
So it
yes.
makes sense that it's not the same for women. Yeah,
Right. I
yeah,
know.
for
I feel like
sure.
that's pretty much every blanket recommendation is like, well, there
Yeah.
was a study on men. Anyway, that's a whole
Mm-hmm.
nother podcast.
Oh, of course.
But yeah, so it was like looking at that, like fasting and realizing that I wasn't eating until like 11 a.m. most days, or having caffeine before I had any food, or, you know, along the way, like I thought lower fat stuff was good, or, you know, like limiting carbohydrates and doing some carb cycling for some of the things, and just recognizing that it had caused me to label things as good and bad. And so a lot of it too was just like reintroducing things and having them and realizing like none of these things are going to kill me. And oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
it's so much more freeing when you just like aren't constantly thinking about that, or like going to restaurants and like looking at calories versus what you actually want. And so I just feel like I've gained so much more freedom, yeah, along the
That's
way.
amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. For all the supplements that you listed, just out of curiosity, is that something that like Dr. Dwayne or one of the doctors that you were working with suggested, or was that more of like self-research and what you felt best to be taking, or like what was
Yeah.
that doctor
Um,
related or doctor
so
prescribed, I guess?
yeah, no, I would say like the beef liver and oyster capsules. That was my first nutritionist, because she had actually used them too. And then, vitamin D fish oil was just more like a neo-fertility. They always recommend that. So I was like, I should be doing, and I think Dr. Durain agreed with that. She prescribes my, thyroid medication and the low-dose naltrexone and the testosterone cream. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then the DHEA again was another thing that early on when everything was just like in the tanks, it's like, let's try this. But we're gonna check actually that tomorrow because I was, anything that I don't need to be taking, I'm like, if
Oh,
I don't have
sure.
to, and my body's now like clearly doing okay because it's had 3 pretty normal cycles. I mean, it was like I want to say 41 or 42 days from the first to the second, but from what I understand, that's pretty normal. Like sometimes it can be up to 60 days as you're just first getting them back. So this next one will be like closer to like 32 or 33. So
Mm-hmm.
getting more normalized, I guess. But
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's interesting too with the levothyroxine and low-dose naltrexone because I also have thyroid issues and I've been on
mhm,
levothyroxine for years. I mean, since high school, I've
yeah.
been on that. And then I just recently talked to my doctor about doing the low-dose naltrexone. So I'm actually going to be starting that and just
Oh,
to kind of see like, okay,
yeah.
what can I get off of this levothyroxine? What is so anyways, it's
Right.
interesting you're on both too. I'll have to
Yeah.
pick your brain more about that. But
Yeah.
okay, and then the nutrition part, that's another thing I wanted to talk about too. You mentioned like, okay, you can eat ice cream every day. Like
Yes.
that, and I will say like for me, I am the type of person that I mean, I work out simply because I feel awful when I don't,
Yeah.
but like there is it's all kind of reactionary of like, yeah, okay, I should probably work out now. So I will say for me personally, if I'm eating ice cream every day, I don't feel good.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, two different stories require two different things. But what does your typical diet now look like versus what it looked like? I know you talked about caloric intake and that
Yeah.
obviously being a lot more now, but just in general of what you were eating. What does
Yeah.
that look like? What is different?
Yeah, I mean, before, like my breakfast would have been like a protein shake or overnight oats or something. Um, and then lunch would have been like, I would have done like one of those for breakfast and then one of those for lunch, basically. So not a ton. And again, then I was doing that fasting. So it would be at like 11 that I would first have like breakfast. And then dinners, it was always very lean meats and always vegetables. I always love sweet potatoes, so like that part hasn't changed, but we'd also do a lot more like salads or definitely probably lower on the carbohydrates. Like I didn't do a lot of bread or sandwiches or that sort of thing. Whereas now, like my breakfast will be like 3 eggs with ham plus avocado toast plus a banana. And then I'm having a snack, which usually like goes like at least 300 calories, probably like 400 calories. And then lunch is just what I like. I might have a granola bowl or a like bagel sandwich or any type of sandwich. And then another snack, a lot of nuts. So, I mean, I still like aim for like pretty nutrient dense stuff.
It's not like you're
Um,
going to McDonald's every day now just to
yes.
increase calories, right? Like,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because there is that fine balance. I feel like there are some in when you're recovering from hypothalamic amenorrhea or whatever, that there's kind of two camps of like just eat whatever you can to get the calories, which for some people like that's just what it has to be. Versus like let's still do this and still like make sure I'm like feeling good, like you said, because if I was eating junk all day, every day, I would not feel good. And there are times where I'm like, I don't feel like ice cream, but I need something, so I find something else to have at night. But at that point, it's like it's just about calories of like, okay, what can I have that sounds good and and will meet the need. But yeah, definitely like more variety with dinners of like we'll do teriyaki takeout more or like just things that for whatever reason, I'm like thought rice was bad or you just get weird, stupid rules in your head, that stick because diet culture tells us like they're not good for you. So I've also done a really good job of like editing who I follow now, and I'm very much like find the people that are very anti-diet culture, and it's just so refreshing to see those
Yeah.
kind of people instead of the opposite.
Yeah, it's a lot. I feel like everything is a lot of mindset work
Hmm.
of what 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 lies are you believing? What rules? I love how you said like kind of food rules. Like you might not even consciously think that you're thinking rules about what you're supposed to
Right.
be eating, but then yeah, and honestly, I was kind of reflecting as you said that at first. I was like, "Ooh, what food rules do I have?" I think it's something worth diving deeper into of understanding, because that can be putting more stress and more anxiety on you than you even know. When
Right.
all day, I mean, it is a requirement that humans eat every day, like just for
Right.
basic health, right? We need to be eating every day, and there's so many different options of what we could be eating, and so we're always having to make decisions throughout the day of just the one thing that keep or not the one thing, but one of the main things that we need to keep us alive, which is
Right.
food. And there's a lot of mental game that goes into that.
Right.
So I'm glad you said that. And so what actually, if you don't mind me asking, what was some of the, well, I guess you went into a little, I was going to ask what were some of the rules that you were believing? And I know you went into a little bit of like, okay, rice was not good and
Yeah.
some things like that, but was there any kind of bigger overarching things that you really had to work through to get over in order to start eating more? Like
Yeah.
was there a big mental shift there too?
I mean, it was just, again, just figuring out like I wouldn't eat before workout. So when I was still working out, she was
Mm,
like, you essentially need like a mini meal before you work out, and then eating like right afterward, and then um eating trying to eat within an hour of like waking. So those were definitely big shifts. But again, yeah, like you said, of not even recognizing what were rules. Like some of the examples he would give, and not all of these applied to me, but would be like, do you basically like, do you change what you eat during the day knowing you're going to like a big event that night? Or are you looking at the menu ahead of time to see what's like quote unquote healthiest? Or, do you only allow yourself one of those things a day? Like if it's a treat, you're like, oh, I already had one today, I can't have another one. Or, yeah, what are some of the other ones? Just, yeah, like fasting rules, or you can only have this. Like, I feel like in my head, dessert was always meant for after dinner. And so if I ever was going to have dessert, like middle of the day felt really weird to me. I don't know. So just like weird things that it, just somewhere along the way you're taught is quote unquote healthy. And then all of a sudden, if it gets too extreme or gets to the point where then you're like, oh, I can't have that. If anything's off limits, like really that's a problem. I mean,
yeah,
nothing should,
yeah.
I like in my mind, it's all about moderation. And yeah, like you said, some things might not make you feel good if you're having it all the time, but I think your body does a really good job too of being like, okay, I'm done. I've had enough. Where like I'll have ice cream 3 nights in a row and then be like, I really don't want ice cream. Like I need something different, whatever that looks
Yeah.
like. Um,
And listening to your body when it says
yes,
that too, rather than like
yes.
continuing to pound the ice cream, right?
Right,
Like,
right. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of times people ignore our hunger cues, whether it's the cue of hunger or the cue of fullness. And it's because we've been taught to like suppress those or, not listen to it. But once you actually listen to it, our bodies do a pretty darn good job of telling us what exactly we need and when we're satisfied and when we're full and
yeah, yeah, amen to that. So, just getting into today, then, now you said you've been trained as a FEM medical provider, which is
yeah.
phenomenal. I love FEM. I'm actually going to be interviewing here maybe in the next few weeks, I think, maybe in a month. I don't know. I'll have to look at my calendar, but I'm
Yeah.
interviewing two women that represent FEM. And so, we're just going to talk
Awesome.
about like what FEM is. And I'm
Yeah.
really excited to learn more about it. But how are you implementing that now into your practice? Like, what does that look like now, changing from the
Yeah.
nurse practitioner you used to be versus the nurse practitioner you are now?
Yeah, so we're hoping to really like kick it off, launch it in January, I want to say, but it's within our women's health clinic because so often we'll see what we call gyne consults, and more often than not, it's someone who has a story that looks like PCOS or possibly endometriosis. And the way our clinic was set up initially is like we do the consults and then we refer them to the right people. Whereas now we're going to be able to offer them to be a part of the FEM program and actually run the labs. And in a perfect world, we'll be able to keep the labs in-house, and then can also hopefully potentially do the ultrasound in-house, but really just treat those women from a root cause approach. We also have the FEM teachers, which is so great because I mean, almost every single one of my patients, like whether they have normal cycles, but they're like asking questions about what the normal cycle looks like, or they don't have normal cycles, I'm like, you need this program, like you need to, and it doesn't have to be FEM, but that's just what we have in the teachers we have. So that's why
Oh,
like
sure.
I go
That makes
route,
sense.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but I just think every woman should learn how to chart their cycles. And it's something that like I'm going to teach my girls from day one, of this is what's normal, this is not, and help them advocate from themselves when like their cycles aren't normal if they're not normal. So
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. It truly is amazing too how you can live your whole life one way and then just like a roadblock comes and just hits you in the face and you're like, "Oh my word. Like there is
yes,
something new, something different." And then you just change your whole trajectory for the better and
yeah.
I'm so glad. Praise God for periods, you know?
I know, I know,
Who
seriously.
knew? Who
I
knew?
view it as such a blessing. And I know some people think it's like so inconvenient, but after not having it for so long and realizing like how detrimental it is to your health to not have one, I'm just like, thank you, God,
Yeah.
for giving me
Yeah.
this back. So
Yeah,
yeah.
amazing. Well, Shannon, if somebody wanted to get to know you better or wanted to contact you to ask you more questions about it, how could they do that?
Yeah, so I am on probably easiest way is on Instagram. It's Shannon Leach _. And yeah, I'm an open book. So happy to share more of my
Awesome.
story or help anybody any way they need it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Shannon.
Of course.
Thanks for listening to the Truth and Fertility podcast. If you are enjoying this content, please leave a 5-star review. That helps me tremendously. For more information about learning to chart your fertility cycle, you can visit truthandfertility.com, and I'll talk to you guys again next week.